What's up, everybody? Hockey Time here, back for another week of NHL Power Rankings. This one for Saturday, January 20th through Friday, January 26th. The games spanning through this week. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Some pretty wildly entertaining ones this week. Gonna jump right into it. And for the first time in a couple weeks here, we have some movement at the bottom. Dropping a spot to number 32 is the Chicago Blackhawks. The Hawks go 0-3 on the week. They're 3-7 in their last 10. Not really too much else to say on this team. San Jose went on a bit of a bump this week, so of course someone has to fall down, and Chicago ends up being that team. Number 31, also dropping a spot, is the Anaheim Ducks. Anaheim goes 1-2 on the week. They're 3-6-1 in their last 10. Neither of these teams have abysmal last 10 records, but just not quite good enough to keep them out of these bottom two spots. And of course, the team going 3-0 on the week, bumping up two spots, is San Jose. 4-5-1 in their last 10 has been a decent little stretch for them. And they, because of that, bump up a few spots to number 30. So those are the three real bottom feeder teams. We can jump into the more typical NHL teams now. So number 29, no disrespect to those fan bases. Those teams are just, they're in a league of their own right now. Number 29, dropping a spot as well, is Columbus. Columbus goes 1-1 on the week, a pretty short week for them. I believe the only team to play two games this week, just looking through my notes here. Yeah, I think they're the only team to play just the two games. They go 1-1, 3-5-2 in their last 10. The goaltending still an issue for this team. Still, I guess, shopping Merzlikins. I don't think there's any interest there. Still going to have to drastically improve his performance in order to generate that interest, and I just don't know that that's going to happen, especially at the cap hit he's at. So that remains the biggest news for Columbus, really. This week they fall back to number 29. Number 28 also dropping one spot. They go 1-2 on the week, and that is Montreal. Montreal kind of just, again, in this same range. I think I mentioned last week of like 24 to 28. They're now at the bottom range of that, so I'd be a little surprised to see them fall below Columbus. But again, they're not a team that's expected to really like make a big jump forward, make a push for the playoffs, none of that. So still pretty much playing to their expectations. Not overly surprised to see them this far down, but considering the consistency of at least effort that they've had in the past, it's a bit surprising to see them having fallen this much. But some of the teams this bottom row had pretty solid weeks, so it's not shocking. And of course, they had the issue with Brendan Gallagher now being suspended 5 games. He hasn't been the player that he used to be, but still a big loss for them. He's an emotional leader in their locker room, all that good stuff. So this week, Montreal drops one spot to number 28. Number 27, and this team moves up 2 spots. That's Ottawa. 2-0-2 on the week. They're 4-4-2 in their last 10. Obviously, that's not a great last 10 record, but when you're in this section of the rankings, it really doesn't take all that much to move you up a few spots, and Ottawa realizes that this week. Again, I still don't really think this team has much to play for at this point in the season. I don't think they're going to make a miracle run like St. Louis did to make it to the playoffs, despite where they're at in the standings. I just don't see this team being capable of that, but definitely a better week than some of the ones they've had previously. Good to see them build a little bit of momentum on their wins. So some good trends there from Ottawa, if you want to call it that, but in general, they definitely still need some more in order to build what they've been working on and become a team that will eventually push toward the playoffs again. I don't expect them to get there this year. Hopefully they just build that momentum to be prepared, I guess, next season to be able to at least approach that. Hopefully, maybe, we'll see. Number 26, same spot as last week, is Buffalo. They go 1-2 on the week. I didn't feel like it was fair to drop them below Ottawa just yet. They actually have a decent record in their last 10. They're 6-4. So they've had some good games this week, which is not really their week. They lose a tough one to Anaheim, which is never great, but they also beat LA, which is a team that's been struggling, but on paper has a pretty solid roster. So kind of hard to judge this team. In all honesty, apologize if you guys can hear my cats rattling around in the back here. But all in all, nothing crazy from Buffalo this week, so they stay at the same spot, number 26. Number 25, another team dropping 2 spots. They go 1-2 on the week, and that is the Islanders. Despite bringing in Patrick Waugh, the coach buff lasted just 1 game. They lose their next 2 after that. They're 2-7-1 in their last 10, and this is one of those teams that is just very swiftly dropping down these rankings. Just in general, all of the good trends that we saw from them earlier in the year are not there. The goaltending is still fine, but it's largely Sorokin carrying the weight there. Varlamov has not been great in his recent games, especially the most recent one he played. His first game under new coach Patrick Waugh was not a good one. They think they ended up getting the win in that game, or maybe losing by a goal. I don't remember if that was the first game that Waugh coached or the second, but tough period. He rebounds from it, but just in general, not quite enough to keep them afloat. And this is a team that hasn't changed really for years now. They don't score a lot. They rely heavily on their defense and goaltending in this season. Earlier in the year, it was working okay, but now it's just not really cutting it for them. So they drop another couple spots here to number 25. Number 24 this week, dropping 4 spots, is my Washington Capitals. They go 0-3 on the week. They're 4-6-0 in their last 10, and the trends that have haunted this team all year just continue. And frankly, some of the teams surrounding them just had, again, pretty decent weeks, so didn't want to keep those teams below Washington despite them having a mediocre last 10 record. So 0-3 on the week, just not really good enough to keep you from falling a few spots. That's the case for Washington this week. So they go from number 20 to number 24. Number 23, moving up 2 spots, 2-1 on the week, is Minnesota. Trending in the right direction, at least for this week, but still just 4-6-0 in their last 10. They have a lot of ground to make up if they want to get themselves really entrenched into this playoff hunt out west. And frankly, it seems like every week there's a new team added to that hunt. I mean, LA was looking to be safely into the playoffs 30, 25, 30 games into the year, and they're now hanging on for dear life. Seattle made that good run. They haven't been as hot lately, but they're still in it. The Preds are still in it. The Coyotes are kind of still in it. St. Louis very much still in it. So all these teams still ahead of Minnesota. They have, to my point, a bit of ground to make up to catch those guys, but this week the right direction for them. Hopefully we see some more of that last 10 record can improve, and hopefully they continue to make some steps to get closer to that playoff race. But for this week, up a couple spots to number 23. 22, also moving up 2 spots, is the aforementioned Arizona Coyotes. They're 2-2 on the week, really the beneficiary of Washington falling. But hard to complain about 2-2 again. I've preached it pretty much every week this week. There was not a playoff expectation for this team, so the fact that they're involved in these competitive games, still in the mix for a playoff spot, is really all that this fan base can ask for, in my opinion at least. I'm sure there's some fans that would love to see them really dig deep and get in, but I just don't know that that's a fair expectation for them. But it has been fun to watch them. It's been fun to see them involved in these close games. All the same stuff I've been saying for the last week. I won't bore you guys to death. We'll move on to number 21. Which drops 2 spots, and that's Calgary. I was bummed to see Calgary drop this week. They had been on a nice little run of positive momentum. Again, similar to Minnesota this week, they had a couple weeks of trending in the right direction, but this week 0-3, and they now fall to 4-6 in their last 10. And of course, we have the news surrounding the 2018 World Junior or Canadian World Junior team, excuse me, having Dylan Dubé step away. So that's just another player they lose. He hasn't been a huge piece for them, so it's not the biggest loss, but of course that is a pretty big emotional effect on the room, I would anticipate. Um, Nonetheless, hopefully this team can step back into the right direction next week. Again, they had been on a good 2 or 3 week span, I believe, of moving up a few spots at a time. And this week, they take a couple steps back, going 0-3. So hopefully they can rebound next week. But for this week, couldn't hold them higher just because of the fact that they went 0-3. Number 20, and this team drops 2 spots as well, and the aforementioned Seattle Kraken. The Kraken still very much in the playoff mix, 1-1-1 on the week, 5-4-1 in their last 10. Just, again, some teams below them that had been performing pretty well, 2 in particular, which we'll touch on momentarily, but just couldn't quite validate keeping them above 2 of these guys. The play has been drastically different from the play we saw when they were on that big winning streak a few weeks back. Joey Decord's still been pretty good for them. I think he's at this point solidified being the number 1 goaltender above the likes of Chris Drieger, and I don't think Grubauer is coming back anytime soon, but I think even if he were to come back, it would still be Joey Decord's net. So all in all, the Kraken aren't in nearly as bad of a spot as the Flames are, but definitely need to try to get back some of that mojo they had in that winning streak and try to continue to put together more consistent efforts if they want to find themselves in a playoff spot again. The West is pretty tight, pretty crowded as far as teams looking for a playoff spot. Number 19, also dropping 2 spots, 3 in a row here, is Los Angeles. LA goes 1-2-1 on the week, 2-5-3 in their last 10. Again, this was a team that earlier in the year looked to be locked and loaded for a playoff spot. And now they are hanging on by a thread after St. Louis's win tonight against Seattle. They are just 1 point behind LA. LA is also tied with the Predators right now for the 2 wild card spots. So if St. Louis wins their next game, Nashville wins their next game, and LA does not, they're bounced out of a playoff spot. Of course, we have like 35 or so games to go, so definitely some room for improvement here from the Kings, but something has to change. Definitely some locker room toxicity going on. We saw the comments from Drew Doughty recently about his opinion on players playing for themselves, not playing a team game, blah blah blah. The goaltending has not been what it was for the first 30 games. Cam Talbot has fallen off pretty dramatically. Dave Riddick's actually been decent in the games he's played, but I don't think you can rely on Dave Riddick to really carry you the rest of the way. So I'd be curious to see if LA looks to make a move in net. Um, Interesting from a psychological standpoint for their management team to see Cam Talbot go from being really, really good, like almost Vesna level numbers the first 30 games of the year to where he's at now. I wonder if they feel the need to make a move or if they think he's going to be able to rebound. So we'll see what the Kings do there. In general, though, it's been a rough couple weeks. They were up in the top five spots really not all that long ago, but really, really steep fall from grace for them. They're down at number 19 this week. Number 18, one of those teams that had a really solid week, jumping four spots, going 4-0, is St. Louis. St. Louis has just looked really solid this week. They haven't played an exciting brand of hockey by any means, but they're playing pretty stifling, shutdown games against some teams that, don't score a ton. I mean, they shut out the Caps. They beat the Kraken. They only give up 3 goals against Seattle. So they're playing these games that really aren't all that exciting to watch, but in a similar sense to the Islanders in years past, they're playing successfully defensively and scoring just enough to get them by. So this week's a really good week for them. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10 as well. So a very impressive week from the Blues. Again, they're now just 1 point back of a wild card spot from one of Nashville or LA. So we'll see if they can secure that in their next game. And of course, LA and Nashville's next game. But for the time being, a good week for Seattle. They move up a handful of spots to number 18. Number 17, this team drops one spot, 0-2-1 on the week, 3-4-3 in their last 10. And it hasn't been a good week for either Pennsylvania team, but the Penguins are the lower of the two for this week. Just a tough week. I mean, there was some stuff in the game tonight, like Chris Letang really didn't look all that great. Nedeljkovic has been good for them. But just generally, again, this team's been one of, if not the most hot and cold teams in the entire league. It seems like they either have a very good week or a very poor week, and this, of course, one of those very poor weeks. Poor weeks, excuse me, just 1 point through 3 games. So the Penguins just need to find some consistency on the good end of things and not the bad end of things. But for this week, they definitely don't find it on the good end of things, so they drop one spot to number 17. Number 16, moving up 5 spots, and I believe tied for the highest jump this week is Detroit. Detroit only goes 2-1 on the week, but I think just their level of play in general lately has been better than a lot of the teams that they're leapfrogging here, that being Calgary, Seattle, Los Angeles, and Pittsburgh, and then of course staying just above the Blues as well. They're 7-2-1 in their last 10, again 2-1 this week, but in general, Alex Lyon has been very, very good for them. The goal scoring as a whole has been much better. Some of their depth guys that had quieted down for a bit there have reawoken. So good news in general from the Red Wings. I believe, if I remember correctly, they do sit in a playoff spot currently, but of course the East just as much of a chaos storm as the West is. There's a lot of teams involved in the race. Even a team like Pittsburgh, who has not been performing all that great lately, I think is just 5 points out. So definitely have to keep the foot on the gas pedal if you're the Wings, but in general, it's been some really good trends to see from them. The goaltending's been good. The defense has been a bit better. And of course, the scoring back once again. So good stuff from the Red Wings. They move up 5 spots to number 16. Number 15, this team dropping one spot. Another one of those teams in the hunt in the West is Nashville. Nashville goes 1-2 on the week. They're 5-5 in their last 10, a perfect 500. Again, not a ton of really good nor bad stuff for this team. They I don't know. I'm starting to lose faith in them making the playoffs. I think teams like Seattle are probably going to look to overtake them. Even the likes of a Calgary or a Minnesota, I think I could see catching them. Again, their roster, as I've mentioned, really all year in these power rankings, I've been surprised that they've maintained a level this high as far as their play goes and their record. And um, I just can kind of foresee the results tapering off for them a bit. I could, of course, be wrong, as I've been with a couple of teams this year, but just in general, I don't love what Nashville has long term. But we're 45 games in, 46 games in, and they're still in a playoff spot for the time being. So they're doing something right. We'll see if they can hang on to it. But for this week, 1 and 2 just not quite good enough to keep that number 14 spot. Excuse me. So they drop down to number 15. Number 14 also dropping 1 spot is Toronto, despite a 2-1 record, 5-4-1 in their last 10. There's a couple teams really that just leapfrog them. It's not necessarily a matter of them not performing well, more so the teams leapfrogging them playing pretty well. Good to see Ilya Samsonov this week, though, with a couple of strong games, something that he's needed for a good bit now. So especially that Winnipeg game, the 1-0 shutout was huge for him. Definitely a big confidence builder. We'll see if he can continue that moving forward. But for this week, just had to drop the Leafs down 1 spot to number 14. Number 13, this team drops 3 spots. They're 1-2 this week, 4-5-1 in their last 10, and that's New Jersey. They need a goalie, man. It's like we're at that point in the year where it's not a question anymore. Something has to be done to make a move. Of course, now they lose both Mikey McLeod and Cal Foote. Not that Cal Foote had been a huge part of this team this season at all, but Mikey McLeod had a decent year for this team. One of their most consistent face-off men, really one of the most consistent face-off men in the entire league. So that's a relatively large loss for them. I believe he'd been playing third line center minutes, if not fourth line center minutes. But again, one of those guys that provides a lot of value just because of what he's capable of on the dot. So between the goaltending and needing to find some holes to fill for that Devils team, not a great week for them. And then, of course, the record not really being what they'd like to see it. So they drop a few spots to number 13 this week. We'll see if they can rebound starting next week. Number 12, and this team also drops 3 spots, the second of 3 consecutive teams this week dropping 3 spots, and that is the Rangers. 1-2-1 on the week, 3-6-1 in their last 10. It's been a pretty rough little stretch for the Rangers here. The game tonight against Vegas, just one of the many nights where they've been seemingly the better of 2 teams, but a problem that the Rangers haven't really had in a long time that's kind of haunted them this year too is the goaltending has not been that great since really the first 20 games. I mean, you don't want to throw quick in net over Shesterkin, but I think he's at least competing for the top spot right now. Shesterkin's had some games recently that just really haven't been all that great. I don't know if it's a mental thing for him. I don't know if he's playing with a nagging injury. I don't know exactly what it is. But tonight I think they outshot Vegas 37-20, 38-20, and they lose 5-2. Like you can't have that. I know Aiden Hill had a great game, but just in general a pretty tough night from Shesterkin, one of many that he's had recently. So we'll see if they're able to rebound. I'm not, again, overly concerned about this team. We have the news about Philip Hedl, too. I don't know whether or not he'll be coming back. Hopefully that's not something that's too severe for him, but it definitely doesn't sound great. So in general, just not a very good week, results or news-wise, for the Rangers. We'll see if they're able to pick it back up again. I'm not overly concerned about this team. They still sit first in the Metro Division, but definitely not trending in the right direction over the last couple weeks. Number 11, the third of these teams dropping 3 spots, is Philly, another team involved with that World Junior Canadian team. Carter Hart, the piece missing for them, and that's probably the biggest of the 5 names to be supposedly involved in this. That being said, Sam Ersson probably now becomes the starting goalie for Philadelphia. Their tandem now probably Sam Ersson and Cal Peterson, which is up there for one of the worst in the league when Sam Ersson is not on his game for sure. So curious to see now if they get involved with the goalie trade market. I don't really know what free agent names are still available. You would expect Philly to have to go make some kind of move, though I don't think they can move forward with Sam Ersson as the starting goalie for the last 35 to 38 games of their season. But 0-4 this week. It was a rough one for sure. They're still 5-5 in their last 10, but one of, if not the worst weeks Philly's had on the year, which is saying something because they, of course, have had some really good weeks. They've had some middling weeks, but this one, pretty safe to say, is their worst thus far. Number 10, tied for the largest jump at 5 spots, is Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, in their last 10, 8-2, they go 3-1 on the week. And this team has really just been firing on all cylinders. We kind of expected this once, Vasi came back and they were healthy, that they were going to have this team that's been just a monster the last 4 or 5 years, and that seems to be what's happening right now. Vasilevsky's been good. Kucherov maintains his ridiculous point scoring pace. Some of the depth guys for the Lightning that I've never heard of, having pretty good weeks. Guys like Mikey Asamont, Nick Paul, all still performing pretty well. So in general, this roster is getting the depth performance that they seemingly find every year with brand new faces, which is really frustrating if you're a fan of another team, but The management team is obviously doing something right in Tampa Bay, finding these guys and getting them to fill the roles that are needed there. So they move up pretty healthily this week from number 15 to number 10, and we'll see if they can keep it up in the coming weeks. Number 9, another team moving up 3 spots. They're 2-1 on the week, 7-2-1 in their last 10, and that is Carolina. This team has been just consistent really over the last probably month or so. They were in the late teens and have just chipped away a couple spots at a time, and now they sit at number 9. So pretty good stuff in general from Carolina. We'll see if they can continue it. Of course, Antti Ranta still the starter for them, so that's a little bit of nervousness for me if I'm a Canes fan. But he's been decent lately, so we'll see if he can keep that up. But the rest of the team has just looked really, really solid. Not really any chinks in the armor there aside from the goaltending, if you ask me. So we'll see if they're able to improve much. But this team's been really impressive over the last month or so. They move up 3 spots this week to number 9. Number 8, and this team also moves up 3 spots, 3-0-1 on the week. And after struggling for a bit, they're suddenly 7-2-1 in their last 10 as well. And that is Vegas. Vegas, of course, as mentioned, with the really impressive win tonight over the Rangers, just holding on when they needed to, when the Rangers had their stretches of offensive pressure and then counterattacking and, capitalizing on their opportunities. Without Jack Eichel as well. So that's probably the most impressive part of all of this. But good to see Aiden Hill back and having a strong performance. If both him and Logan Thompson are back and healthy, we've seen what they're capable of earlier in the year. So scary stuff for the rest of the Pacific. They do still sit in second. Vancouver, of course, has been on a tear lately, but in general, I don't think that there's any fears of something that's happened to LA really happening to this Vegas team. I think they have the depth. I think they have the defense and the goaltending to really hold it all together. So been a very good week for them, a good little turnaround after their slump. They move up a few spots to number 8. Number 7, this team stays in the same spot despite a 3-0-1 record, and that is the Dallas Stars. A couple teams here really staying in the same spots despite really good weeks. Dallas, the first of them, 3-1 again on the week, 7-2-1 in their last 10. Really no complaints about their performances in general, just hard to bump teams up or down when other teams have also been performing pretty strongly. So that was the case for Dallas this week. Similar story here for number 6, and that is Florida. Also 3-0 on the week, 6-2-2 in their last 10. They of course don't have that overtime loss that Dallas had, but same story, really good performance, just not quite enough to be able to bump them up or down above the team that was in front of them last week, that being Boston, who is still number 5 this week. Also 3-1-0 for the week for them, 6-1-3 in their last 10. The goaltending continues to be pretty dominant. All of the usual suspects performing pretty strong for them. Not really too much else to say about these 3 teams. I feel bad for the fan bases that I can't move them up, but just really couldn't validate moving them up just because of the fact that each of them had been performing pretty well, but I don't think quite enough of a margin between any of the 3 to move them up or down, despite how good all 3 of them have been. Number 4, and this is where we finally have some movement. This team dropping 2 spots, 1-1-1 on the week, and it's Winnipeg again. Wouldn't really have any complaints about this team at all. Frankly, just the team that jumps above, or I guess the 2 teams that jump above them, have been just fantastic lately. But Winnipeg, again, no real complaints. They lose to Boston earlier in the week, and it was the first time in like 35 games they had given up more than 3 goals, which is just ridiculous. Like Brossoit and Hellebuck are going to have the William Jennings locked up by Tuesday if they keep this up. Like it's just been an unbelievable stretch for the Jets. They continue to be pretty dominant. There's nothing wrong with 1-1-1. Just again, when you're at this level on the ranking, it doesn't really take much for teams to pass you. And of course, that happens by 2 teams this week. So the first of those teams, number 3, 3-0 on the week, 7-3-0 in their last 10, is Colorado. Colorado has just been mowing over some really good teams lately. Um, they take care of business against the Kings tonight, which is not necessarily a team that you would regard as a really good team anymore right now. But they completely dismantled the Capitals earlier in the week, too. Nathan MacKinnon continues to be on just one of the more ridiculous stretches of play we've seen from any player in a long time. Probably his best season to date at the halfway point for any in his career. And just in general, everything for the Avs is clicking. Brandon's been playing great. Georgiev's been unbelievable despite still being played a ton. So just all in all, really good stuff from the Avs. They don't sit first in the Central just yet. Winnipeg still holds that spot, but just felt to me like their level of play has still been a slight step above Winnipeg's, despite that they're still behind them in the standings. Number two, and this may be controversial, maybe not, but it is Edmonton. They don't have that top spot just yet, despite going 3-0 on the week. They are 10-0 in their last 10, and I think now 14 or 15 wins in a row. This team has been just humming on all cylinders, everything going right for them. Both goalies playing really well. Of course, all of their usual suspects performing very well as well. Um, there's really no negative comment to make about this team at all right now, which is terrifying because we still have 35 games to go. This is a team was in the basement of the league in like the beginning of November, and they are now just cruising up the standings. I think just like a point or two behind Vegas for the second spot in the Pacific. Um, and it's terrifying because McDavid like hasn't even hit 20 goals yet. But he's going to probably still find a way to get 40, 45, 50, who knows. So this team is just firing on all cylinders. I'm very curious to see how long they can make this winning streak last, but it's been pretty fun to watch despite the fact that I am not at all an Oilers fan. Hockey again is better when this team's good. So good to see them playing well. Just not quite enough for number one yet because 2-0-1 on the week. 8-0-2 in their last 10 is Vancouver, and they just barely hold on to this number one spot. Again, very hard for me not to put Edmonton at one here because of how strong they've been lately, but Vancouver still showing some pretty good performances. A loss tomorrow against Columbus could definitely be the straw that breaks the camel's back if Edmonton wins tomorrow and Vancouver loses to a Columbus team, but nonetheless, they've been pretty good lately and just not quite enough for me to drop them below Edmonton, despite Edmonton being on this lossless streak. So let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Again, it's not 3 out of 3 of the top 3 teams for Canadian teams anymore, but 3 for 4. Still pretty darn good for all you Canadians that watch these videos. Um, yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Let me know whether your team is too high or too low. Leave a like if you enjoyed it as well. And of course, subscribe if you don't mind. It is free. We will talk to you guys tonight for the rankings. I will have a new GoPro goalie video out probably on Sunday. Hopefully, you guys have been enjoying those and just all the content in general. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks for watching.